Okay, we'll make a start. We are going to be recording this, so anyone that does join a little later can just catch up on the beginning bit. Um, Thank you everybody for joining me today. Um, this presentation really is come about after our week at the NEC at the Manufacturing Engineering Show, and the purpose of this presentation is to help companies that are looking to source a new ERP solution and really don't know where to start on that journey. So what should they look out for, and what kind of questions should they be asking, and how do they start that process? Um, so do feel free to either raise your hand using the icon during this meeting, or just chip in and ask any questions, or post it in the chat. Cassandra on the call is our marketing manager. She'll just help me out and just shout out if there's any questions as we go through. We've got an hour. I will whiz through some of the bits on here, but we will make a copy of the slides available as well after the presentation. So hopefully you're all faced with a blue screen that you can see there. I might start the presentation. So let me get into this for you now. So just a little about me for those who don't know, when I'm not busy up the side of a mountain. I am the sales director here at Paradise, and I am also a qualified Prince 2 project manager. So I've worked previously for engineering companies, closely aligned to manufacturing, and kind of got into this world when we moved from Sage 50 accounts to Sage 200. Um, the project was a mixed success at the time, and decided that I liked the stress so much I would do this as a career. So I joined Paradise in 2014 as a junior Sage 200 support desk person, and have kind of progressed through there really through support, project management, being part of the ISO 27001 team, and then moving into kind of sales and sort of sales delivery as well. My real passion as far as my career is concerned is building genuine partnerships with other companies, and actually making sure that we deliver the right solution. We're not just selling product. And about us at Paradise, for those that don't know, so we are based in Northampton, and we've been delivering Sage-based IT solutions since 1987, and that primarily sits around Sage 200 and now Microsoft Business Central. We also deliver cloud hosting and have quite a number of accreditations to our name and to individuals on our team as well. I would describe Paradise as having four main pillars. This is the easiest way to describe what we do as a business. And then we'll kind of get into generally what you should be looking for from a partner as you start your ERP journey. So for us, ERP is our main pillar. So that is delivering Microsoft Business Central and Sage 200, along with other add-ons and solutions that enhance that experience. Then Microsoft and cloud hosting, so traditional IT support, providing infrastructure for those ERP systems and your Microsoft licensing as well. Paradise is a managed service provider, so that means that we also provide all of the wraparound services for IT, including things like your security, your backups, your sort of professional services, advice and help, as well as IT training for you and your staff. And then our last area is software development. So we can also provide software development, either as standalone solutions or most often integrating your ERP solutions to third-party systems, warehousing systems, logistics, websites, that kind of thing. So ERP for manufacturing. For those that we did meet at the NEC, it was all about manufacturing, and we were faced with quite a few questions that came up time and time again. So the next couple of slides are to try and address those common questions that we got about, well, what does that mean? What's ERP for manufacturing? I will just mention at this point as well an organization called the MTC, the Manufacturing Technology Center. We've worked quite closely with them. They are a government and privately funded backed organization. and they can help any UK manufacturing company with things like government grants for IT projects, and also a lot more advice than an IT company could give you, limited to ERP. So they might be able to advise not only on certain software solutions you might need, but how best to lay out your warehouse, um, what you should be looking at in terms of logistics, maybe what kind of new manufacturing processes you might want to consider, all things to try and help streamline your business, and ERP would form, a part of that process. So ERP for manufacturing, a rather daunting graphic that Cassandra spent a couple of days putting together, and we had on our show stand as well. Now, the idea of this, I'm going to grab my laser pointer, is to just try and highlight how ERP actually fits. So the biggest question or most common statement I think we got while we were at the NEC was uh, Sage, that does accounting, right? Which is this little piece here. And that's true. Uh, but particularly when we talk about Sage 200, it is an ERP solution when working with a partner that can help deliver the rest of the software that you might need to sit alongside it. So what we mean by that is that you should have a single, solution, a single ecosystem that's not only going to deliver your financials in the form of Sage, but also start delivering the rest of what you might deem a traditional ERP, so things like supply chain management, warehousing, software, document management, your sales and order processing, and then also including things like manufacturing operations, so works orders, MRP, bill of materials, data capture, and stock control. Traditionally, these can be quite separate, and there's a lot of manual processing or transfer of data between an accounting platform and manufacturing. So where we talk about joined up ERP, it's trying to make that a single solution. Now, most of what's in the middle here is going to be based around software, but that doesn't really end there, because to back all of this up, you need things like infrastructure, so cloud hosting and Microsoft licensing to actually run that software. You're going to need someone to manage all your IT support and security and backups. You may well need some kind of development to sit around that as well, to perhaps link to websites or very specialist software that you might have. And then lastly, you probably want some training. So that's going to be based around training for those particular software solutions, but perhaps also just professional development training, general Microsoft application training that might just help your users make the most out of your investment in an IT system. We'll send a copy of this graphic at the end for you. Have a look at a bit closer. So to put that into context and what that actually means for a manufacturing company, we've put together this slide, and I'm just going to talk around each of these areas and what kind of software a company might typically think about in these areas of a manufacturing business. So just starting with our mobile sales reps. I haven't quite got my Lamborghini yet, but maybe one day. So for us out on sales, it's going to mean things like a CRM system. I would want to be able to access our accounting data, sales order history, customer records while I'm out on the road. Perhaps place orders, on behalf of a customer while I'm there. So we really want some technology that's linked up to our core ERP system. Coming into our finance and admin team, that's where you'd have your traditional finance, Sage software, Microsoft Business Central software, running all of your financial ledgers, perhaps your HR and payroll type systems as well. You may then have a purchasing and planning team as a separate team. So they're going to be in charge of things like your MRP software, your purchase planning for purchase orders, working out what you need and when by. Now from here, it would then move over to operations team. So this would be software like works order processing planning or capacity planning, where your operations team are working out what your production team are actually going to be doing. And from your purchasing team, you may also want a link perhaps to some of your suppliers. So rather than sending purchase orders by PDF or emails or phone calls, this is where development would come in with things like EDI links to automatically send orders over to suppliers. It might be important that you need to track the shipping or supplier logistics coming into you in the form of container management, or just having some idea of where your component stock is in that network. Now, as your stock lands at your warehouse, um, you might want to consider things like automated warehousing systems, barcode warehouse scanning applications or handhelds, and that would allow your staff to be scanning stock in real time and updating your ERP system without the need for paper. Then we're on to production. So your stock's arrived, your operation teams have planned out what they're going to do with those components. So out in our production facility, applications like a shop floor data capture system and works orders would dictate to the production team what they need to do, as well as actually recording their time spent on works orders and where they are. Now that one's quite key because that would allow people like the finance and admin team or even the sales reps to work out where a customer order is in that production system and how long it might actually be before the customer gets hold of their product. Then generally we're back to our warehouse. So we've finished producing our goods and they're sat on a shelf ready for goods out. And those goods are going to go out on either your own transport or most likely through couriers. So you may need to link your ERP system perhaps to courier systems, DPD, TNT, etc., rather than using each of their own individual portals and somebody keying in those deliveries. So that again is where development might fit in. Equally, if you've got your own transport network or your own fleet of vans, perhaps you want to have a portal where you can track and trace your own deliveries and sign on glass. And the last one we'll mention in here, and the most important for any business, is your customers. So what data do they want to see? Do they need a portal where they can view their own sales orders, download their statements? Do they want to be able to place orders without actually having to phone you? So again, you might want to think about some sort of portal where they can access parts of your data without actually having to interact with you directly. So hopefully that gives a slightly rounded view as to how an ERP actually links into different business areas. The ERP maze then. So this next section uh, are all things that we have picked up at Paradise over the last 30 odd years when we've implemented IT projects. These are all things that I would say are things that you should consider, things that you might want to go away and have a think about, and things to ask any potential IT partner that you might look to work with. So the top things that I have picked up that you might want to have a think about or should think about really is firstly, why? Why are you actually looking at a new ERP system? Um, that might sound kind of obvious, but we do speak to quite a few prospects that aren't really sure. So is it because you've got old redundant systems? Is it perhaps because you're launching a new product and your system can't cope? Is it perhaps somebody new has come into the business and they're just driving for a new system that works like a one that they've used previously? So it is quite important to define why you actually need it. CapEx and monthly budgets, we're seeing more and more now that software is moving across to subscription. So just having to think about what your budget is, how much are you prepared to spend up front, how much are you prepared to spend on subscriptions. And that one comes in quite key working alongside people like the MTC that I mentioned, because they might be able to help you with funding for these types of projects. And that may well affect how much you want to spend up front for that government funding and how much you have as an ongoing subscription. Timescales and hard deadlines. We all know that we want the project yesterday, but it's being realistic about what those timescales are, and actually, are there any hard deadlines? If you need it done by year end, what's the reason for that? Or are you up against a hard deadline for a product launch and it really has to be done by then? That's very important for a partner to know as well very early on, so they can be realistic about whether they can actually deliver it on time for you. Cloud or on-premise, that's a big one at the moment, whether you actually want to have a new solution on on-premise servers or look at cloud hosting. And one MSP and one ecosystem. So what we mean by that is wherever possible, you want to try and group all of your services and things that you're going to purchase through one partner and really buy into one software ecosystem that's going to make support and your lives much easier when it comes to actually using the system. Staff buy-in and support. Very important that you have more than just a core group of people in your business that are actually buying into this new solution. It will only ever be as successful as you make it and your staff buy into it and make it happen. And a requirements list. Really important for your own sake to try and come up with a bit of a requirements list as to what it is you want out of a new system. And I would always split that into two different things. What's the minimum viable solution? What's the absolute minimum that you must have to use a new system? And what are the nice to haves? What are you actually wanting to get to perhaps later down the line? So when it comes to actually picking a partner, you really want to try and look for a partner and not a supplier. So you want to try and find a partner that's really going to work with you and seems invested in the long term, not just trying to sell you some off-the-shelf software. You really want a partner that perhaps can help you with things like IT strategy reviews or requirement scoping. Now, doing that with any IT partner will lead to a certain amount of bias because they're only ever going to know the software solutions that they deliver. So working with independent consultants, and actually John Waller on the call today is exactly that, they can help you and be impartial when it comes to actually trying to help you define your requirements and what you might need. Communication is key. How easy is it to actually get hold of the potential partner you're going to work with? Can you speak to the right people? If you think you want software development, can you speak to a developer, or are you only ever stuck talking to a salesperson? And how well do they know your industry? A lot of ERP partners, particularly in the Sage world that we work in, will have a niche. Now, some of those may focus on financial industries or perhaps um, construction. We sit on the manufacturing side here at Paradise. So it is quite important to try and pick a partner that knows your common issues and things that you might see in the industry that you work in. In-house versus outsourced resources and products. Not always easy to define this when you're sort of initially speaking to a partner, but it's good to try and sound out from them of the solution that they're proposing, how much of it are they delivering, and how much of it is going to be third parties that they're calling in to deliver it. And the reason that's important is how easy it will make the support longer term. Are you going to end up having to ring multiple uh, parties to get support, or is it only going to be the one partner that you're talking to? Always have a product demonstration or more, and I would have several of those with different key stakeholders in the business. And then lastly, focus on the overall solution. Um, the ERP overall is a solution made up typically of a number of different individual products. So I'll try not to get too hung up on the actual product. If it was Sage or Microsoft, etc., it's more the overall solution and whether that's going to work for you, including the partner themselves. So what common pitfalls do we see then during an ERP project? And these are generally pitfalls that we see on the customer side. So unrealistic expectations. Knowing that you want the world, but you need it yesterday is not going to happen. It's something we see fairly often. So it's just trying to be realistic about what you need versus what you want to have. Trying to implement everything at once. We would normally discourage a customer from trying to do the whole lot at once and try and help them phase a project into individual projects, perhaps over a year or two. A one-person agenda can be fairly common where you might have a single person in the business that's really driving this change or this project. And if they're allowed to do that sort of unchecked, you can end up with a project that's not going to work. Scope creep is quite a common one, where you'll start down the road of a project and then we start adding in a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and before we know it, it becomes a bit of an unmanageable beast. So it's important there on both sides for the partner and the customer to try and remember the original scope and deliver that in the first instance. All the other bits that come up through that should definitely be noted and perhaps form a second project later down the road. Rushed implementation, and this comes back to the original point I made about timescales and what those timescales are. If a project is rushed, it is likely to lead to a very painful go live experience for you. And conversely to that, a lack of momentum. So we see it just as equally where a project may just run out of steam. Commonly, someone may leave an organization, either on the partner side or the customer side, that was quite key to a project, and it sort of loses its momentum. So it's quite important to keep that momentum running. And insufficient testing, I would say, is the number one reason for leading to quite a painful project. So making sure that it's tested by key members, making sure it's tested by all people that are going to use the system. And when you think you've done a bit more testing, probably do a bit more. So the major errors we see, and these are things that we have seen lead to projects actually fail outright in the past. So absolutely a lack of staff engagement from inception through to delivery, and that is generally where we've got a one-person agenda. Typical examples might be an MD owner that's come in and said, we want a new system. They've sort of babysat the entire project, and the first time the rest of the staff hear about that is on the day of go live. So those are definitely worth avoiding if we can. The saboteur is usually someone in the organization that doesn't want change. As far as you are concerned as a customer, it's important to try and identify that person and make them known to the IT partner. And it's our job as the IT partner to actually spend some time with those individuals and win them round. It's important that they're on board with the project. So we need to spend some time with them and actually work out, well, what are their concerns and what are their problems. Perhaps they need a little more training or a bit more hand-holding than some of the other staff might need. Expecting your partner to know your data. An IT partner will always be able to technically tell you during a project that your data is correct. It's not going to error as they import it. But what they will not reasonably be able to do is tell you that the data is actually right in terms of names, dates, customer account information. So you do need to take that on and make sure that you are the one that is checking through that data during testing and making sure that addresses and names and things are in the right places. Going live unprepared, which is closely linked to not doing enough testing. So going live because you've hit your deadline and you just want it done is going to make it very, very painful or fail entirely if not done properly. And then lastly, doubling down on a failing project. At Paradise, we have picked up several projects from other MSPs that have failed for one reason or another. And it's a very brave thing to do to actually stand up and say that this project is failing and we should stop. Not many IT partners are going to put their hand up and make that call. So it would generally come down to you as a customer to decide to do that. But it is always an option. So with that said, what are our best practices then? Always appoint an internal project lead. And I would say that this person or team of people that you appoint as a project lead internally wants to not be the person that's signing the checks. I would always have those as two separate people. Write your own testing scripts. Most partners may well have generic testing scripts, but every business runs a little bit differently and is a bit unique. So the more of your own testing scripts that you can write and have your staff run through, the better. Regular meetings between partners and clients. If your partners aren't asking you for this, then you should insist on it. For us at Paradise, I would say any large ERP project we'd be having regular weekly Teams calls with key stakeholders to catch up on what's going on and keep that momentum flowing on the project. And a bedding in period between project phases. So we mentioned earlier splitting a project out into several smaller projects. Uh, Definitely key to have some time between them to actually allow staff to get used to it, to allow the cultural change, and to allow staff to turn around and say actually they're happy with what they're doing, they like the new system, and they'll be a lot more enthusiastic before you then throw another load of software at them. And being open to changing processes. We do sometimes see it where a site may like some new software, but they want it to do exactly what the old one did, but just be newer. And that doesn't really happen. So as much as software can help you, it may well be that you do have to change some processes to live with this new ERP solution. So you do need to just be open to perhaps changing some business processes to suit that. And staff training, not only during the project, but actually after the project has gone live as well, is quite key. You spent all this money on a new ERP system, and 2 years down the line, that team of people that put it in has left the business, and you've got new people in with hand-me-down notes and homemade guides on how to do things. So it's quite important, I would say, once a project's gone live, every couple of years, just to have some refresher training for staff on how to use that ERP system that you've invested in. So to give some idea of what a typical project timeline might look like when we're talking about implementing a new ERP solution. So this timeline is starting in January of this year, and typically I would expect a couple of months worth of pre-sales, demos, going through all the motions and putting forward some proposals to a customer. Then we're probably looking at a month or so of project scoping, where we might come and do a deep dive into exactly what a customer might want or need. And then if it's a complex project, what we would deem a solutions workshop or a proof of concept. So you may ask your partner to actually build you a proof of concept system. Can they prove to you it will actually do what you want it to do? So now we're into May before the project really starts. And phase one of that project is going to be implementing the infrastructure that you might need, completing any consultancy and design, your user training, and then actually going live on that first element of the project. So if we're talking about ERP, that would commonly cover things like your core finance and perhaps your sales, purchase order, and stock control. And that would be a good first project before you get into all of the manufacturing add-ons that you could do later down the line. So now we're into the middle of August, and we may well use the next couple of months as a bedding down period before we start the next project, which could include things like bill of materials, works orders, MRP later on. So although we've gone over quite a few things that can sort of lead to a project to not work out and things to consider, we at Paradise have had quite a few success stories. So I'll just show a few on the screen here. There probably are some names you might recognize, like Itsu Grocery in Norton. And we wouldn't be based in Northampton if we didn't work with a few shoe manufacturers. So we have got on there Churches of England, Trickers, Forrester and Son that we've worked with over the years, delivering different types of ERP solutions, bespoke software, and cloud hosting. So we'll talk about one of these in a little more detail and just give you an idea of the journey that some of our customers follow. So Norton Motorcycles is a fairly big household name. Norton relaunched in 2008, based in Donington. And that's when they restarted their manufacturing in the UK. The image at the bottom there, you can see that it looks like they're producing bikes on an office floor on carpet, and that is what you can see. So when they started up, it was fairly small again in the UK, literally building bikes over a free-floor office and using the elevators to move parts up and down. And when we met them, they were operating on Sage 50 and independently using Excel spreadsheets for their bill of materials and stock management. That's a fairly typical scenario we see, and then accounts can't see what's going on with the stock and production side and vice versa. So for them, the hard deadline was actually the launch of a new bike model. And the new V4 bike there in the picture on the right had 4,000 components, whereas the models previous had only around 1,000 components. Now, trying to manage that on Excel spreadsheets, they recognized was going to cause a serious issue. So they wanted to implement a new ERP before the launch of that bike so it could handle that production. So we met them in 2017 and embarked on a 2-phase project, so not biting it all off in one go. And the first phase of that project was to move them from Sage 50 to Sage 200, still staying at that time on their on-premise IT hardware. That went live, and in 2018 we onboarded the next phase of the project. So they went live with stock control, bill of materials, works orders, and material resource planning, which then fully removed the remaining spreadsheets they were using for production and gave them a single system to look across from the beginning of financials all the way through to what have we actually got out on the shop floor at the moment and what do we need to plan to purchase in the next few weeks. But it didn't stop there. Norton Motorcycles went into administration in January 2020, so they had a fairly turbulent ride, and then they were acquired by TVS, an Indian motorcycle company. So as a result of that, we restored their Sage 200 system after the administration and as TVS took over. And with that restore, we put it into a Microsoft Azure cloud platform, and we were cloud hosting it for them. They then recognized that they would like to try and automate their warehousing system. So in 2021, there was a third project to implement an Android-based barcoding and warehousing platform as well, bolting onto all of the previous work that we'd already done. Now, at the moment, TVS are absorbing Norton into their own systems, and Paradise has been there again to help them reduce what they're doing on Sage 200 and scale that down to just a legacy platform on a cloud hosting solution. So this is quite a nice rounded story of a customer that's gone from the beginning with Sage 50 and struggling on systems all the way through to what's a fairly typical ending where perhaps they're bought out or become part of a much larger group and are then absorbed into enterprise level ERP. And as you can see, we've actually implemented those projects, in different phases over a number of years, all forming part of one ecosystem and one ERP solution that's scaled up and down with them as they've sort of grown and then gone back down again. So just to summarize where we're at today, then really my key takeaways and bits to have a think about if you're looking at implementing an ERP, alignment is key. Making sure that what you're trying to do with your ERP system does actually match what the business wants overall, and it's not just a single person that's pushing for this change or single team. Start small and think big. Start off with just what you need, and then you can always scale it up later on once you've got a better idea of what else you might want. Always have an ERP champion, someone that's going to run the project for you on your side, preferably someone that's enthusiastic about having that change and someone that isn't signing the checks. Stakeholder engagement. Try and get everybody involved if you can, only to the degree that they need to be involved, but it's important that the company is aware of what's going on. And the more you can do to get staff to buy into this being a good thing, a good change, then the better the chances of success. Documentation. Any good IT partner should provide you with plenty of documentation as the project goes on, but it's always important to have your own, especially things like taking notes during training, developing your own user guides for new starters and as staff leave will really help the longevity of your ERP system. And continuous improvement. Just because you've implemented shouldn't really mean that that's the end of the project. As we saw there from Norton, that carried on for 2 or 3 years, implementing different add-ons and different solutions to keep improving it and meeting the changing demands of the business. That's me. So I would welcome at this point anyone that's got any kind of questions or anything that you might want to ask. More than welcome.
I'll start it off, Alex, because I've got a couple of questions that have been messaged.
Yeah, sure.
So customization and flexibility. This one's asking, how flexible is your ERP systems in terms of customization to meet our specific manufacturing processes and requirements?
Sure. Okay. The short answer would normally be very, but it depends largely on the kind of partner you're working with. So I would say this really comes down to checking out the IT partner and what their capabilities are. Most software solutions off the shelf aren't going to bend a huge amount, Sage included in that, and Microsoft Business Central. But what you really need is a partner that is capable of things like bespoke development, or can demonstrate to you that they can actually implement suitable add-ons that are going to allow you to make that solution work for what you need it to do.
Thank you. And I have got one more, sorry. Integration capabilities. So how well will ERP software integrate with existing software in our factory?
Again, it's definitely always a question to ask any potential partner or vendor that you're looking at. Most mid-sized ERP solutions, which is what we're talking about today with Sage 200 and Microsoft Business Central, will have the tools available to integrate into other softwares, but they won't necessarily do it out of the box. So, for example, typically we would end up linking Sage 200 to third-party warehouses or websites. And to do that, the development team is involved in actually making that link, but the tools are available in the solution to do that. So again, it is just checking with your potential partner or vendor about what kind of integrations you might want, what other software are you using that you can't get rid of, and how can they integrate your ERP solution to that existing software that you can't necessarily get rid of. Yes, John.
Thanks for that, Alex. Really good overview, clear as ever, which is always good. Nice to see. And once again, thanks for bringing out some of the challenges. I think that's always good to reveal that and some of your experience, which is great. I suppose one of the things I'm interested in is that we would typically work with a client around the idea of a transformational change. So we would be looking to work with them to get, if you like, better results for transformational change, better ability to embrace the uncertainty. So that would happen as part of the timescales. So the team who are due to face the change would be better at embracing it by, if you like, gaining more information, building a bit more trust, building the communication, asking, as we've talked about plenty of times. So I suppose my question is, why is it that companies would prefer to lose staff and jeopardize the project potentially, rather than actually sort of look at this as something to go, yeah, actually, we want to get the team in the right place? Because you've mentioned a lot about engagement. You talked a lot about buy-in, culture piece. You've talked about communication, etc. So I'm interested, why do you think people would prefer to spend the money later and deal with the problems associated with it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure it's a conscious decision. I don't think that, from the experience I've seen in the companies we've worked with, it's never particularly a conscious decision to not have those staff engage. I just don't think that they particularly consider it important. I guess on the flip side, too many chefs ruin the broth, etc. So there would probably be a hesitancy from an individual or a team that. So let's say typically, I don't know, a finance team would like to implement Sage 200 for their own core needs. Fine, we're on board with that. Now, if the project's allowed to run where we, the IT partner, only ever really deal with the finance team to implement this new system, it's not until day one that the sales team turn around and go, well, hang on a minute, how do we put in a quote? We weren't involved with this, and you've just thrown a new system on us. So it's not necessarily a conscious decision to leave those people out, but it does need to be a conscious decision, I think, to actually include them in the first place. Yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers it.
I think one of the observations is that I was talking to a chap from Oracle, and what they said was there were 3 areas of interest. One was a good change manager for the project, as you've alluded to, which makes sense. A really good tool to capture all the elements. That makes sense as well. But where it fell down was the engagement was, well, we'll organise some events. We might have some sandwiches, and it's like, well, how's that? I don't understand how. That's the bit that must make sense. And I think you're right in terms of it's not a conscious decision. But what I think is interesting from the work that we do is if we can encourage a team to be looking at what that means for them. What does this change mean for them? How does it affect them? Why is the company doing it? What's a lot of the time people suddenly, as you say, faced with the change, they don't understand it, and that breeds the uncertainty, and that affects the productivity. So I just think it's interesting to that just seems to be, as you've said, I think you've answered the question by, I think people don't consider it, which is a bit concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. And really what you'd want is, whoever's kind of driving for that change, it's not involving every single user, as we say, but definitely, take someone key from the sales team, take someone from the production team, production shop floor manager, etc., and have them involved in the demo stages, have them involved in, look, here's what we're doing, here's the change we're going to implement, here's what it's going to mean for your team, and let them have their say. I think the biggest thing, for most people, if you're going to put change on them and don't let them actually have a say, or even voice an opinion, then that leads to upset and them not being on board with it. But it is quite a fine balance between having too many people involved and actually trying to keep that momentum and actually just get on with the project and get it in.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, John. Have we got any other questions, or are we already? Yep. Hi, John.
Hiya. Right, I'm working with a prospect client at the moment, and they've got a large implementation of all of this coming through. Again, they seem to be procrastinating about getting new staff members bedded in first. So unfortunately, they're likely to pick up bad ideas and sort of bad practice, which you need to then sort of change, which is always difficult, which is sort of a semi-answer to the other John's question. One of the things they've got at the moment is a legacy mainframe system, and they seem to like that because it is just such high speed input and it's just numbers and stuff like that. With all of the current sort of Windowsy style version of everything, it seems to be a far more long-winded process. Are there sort of shortcuts that can be customized into this to speed up the process? So you've just got a high-speed data input clock that is just going through the results of processing orders, or this then becomes, let's actually change the way that all of this works, so something else, an automatic system, can do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that comes under a couple of the points that we've discussed today. So,
Yeah.
so one is definitely the we'd like a new system, but we want it to do exactly what the old one did,
Yep.
which in this day and age can't work if you're taking, that old style input where you're just tabbing and you've got a black and green screen. It doesn't exist anymore. It's all going to be mouse and keyboard and Windows screens. So there's definitely an element of that, and actually, is the business prepared to change some processes and accept that it's not going to work in exactly the same way? And then the second would probably be around bespoke development, I would say. So if they're really not prepared to change a great deal and they really do want or need it to be that quick to input the data, then can you take the ERP system that they're now going for, and can that be developed in any way to add shortcuts, reduce button clicks, reduce presses through to different screens to actually speed that process up? That's probably your two areas.
Yeah, I sorry, carry on.
John. No, I was just carry on, John. Sorry, apologies to do carry on. I interrupted you.
Yeah, it's a strange one. They're they're saying they like their old I think it's like AS400 system or whatever, and so it's just sort of unidirectional information coming out of that, which they are having trouble and struggling with. And so I know there's various software partners that will actually convert that data and input in through to Sage, etc. But it's just coming down to the, why don't you just get an fully integrated system for the whole scope of the business? It is always depressing when you hear this and you just think, well, don't do sort of 2 or 3 half-hearted fixes. Just come up with a full system that will do it all for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Either you know, a full new system, or perhaps it's trying to get to the root of, well, why are you actually, you know, if you're quite happy with what you've got and you can't find another solution that's going to do it, then it comes back to the very first question. Well, why are you doing this then? What's the actual driver for the new project? And do you know the answer to that, John? Do you know why are
No,
they?
they are being particular. This is one that started over a year ago, and they asked me to get in touch again about a month back, and they're saying, yeah, we need you. We need to get everything on board and working and everything. Yes, okay. Do something about it. No, we need to park it for another couple of months so we can get staff trained up on the way that we work. So yeah, this is a very, very strange one.
So we have come across a couple of projects recently, actually, or actually not projects in the end after the conversation we've had. But sometimes the answer is, I had a call the other week on a company using Business Central with a very bespoke solution bolting onto that, and we kind of talked around whether they should upgrade it or not, or should they find off-the-shelf solution. But following the conversation and how good this piece of bespoke was that they had, the answer was actually don't change it. If we can upgrade it to a newer version, then fantastic, but probably don't change it. You don't need to change it. If it works and it's not broken, then don't fix it. The most common reason for older systems like that are more around the security or the Windows side of things. You know, what server versions are they sitting on? And sometimes the answer there is, well, actually, can we just lift it and shift it into a cloud-based solution that's going to be secure for them, but they can carry on using this system that, that they may not culturally want to move away from, or for operational reasons can't move away from. So that could be another angle.
I think just adding to that conversation, I think there's a debate about the technical use of the actual system, i.e. how people use it, as in here's the manual to use it. But then also, if you're then affecting ways of work, which often this is, otherwise back to your first question, why do it? Then it's how we incorporate that piece in. And often it's a case of, well, people just have to put up with it. That's just how it is. Well, the reality is that's the bit that causes the uncertainty, and that's the bit that pushes back on productivity, because people go into work and they're nervous, they don't know how to use something, they make mistakes, they get irritated, and that's what ultimately really starts to affect the things. And I think at the minute there seems to be a lot of noise about, well, we'll make sure they've understand how the system works. Great. How does that affect the ways of work, and how are they thinking about, right, so we're doing this now, we're going to be doing this in the future. Why are we changing to this? What's the benefit of that piece? And also, I do the job all day long. Here's my feedback about what you're trying to do. I get the point about the chiefs, etc. But ultimately, if you talk about continuous improvement being gradual, stepped, small, manageable, with definite aims, then you want to get the best out of that change. Well, clearly, if the people involved in it are really sort of really resenting that and feeling under pressure and frustrated, you've lost a lot of the benefits straight away. In the true sense of collaboration, John, I'd happily have a conversation with you about that if that's interesting. The reason being is not to tout that, but I would be interested to talk to them about what they think they need to do to solve that problem, because certainly that's a very interesting area. And like I say, talking to Oracle, it was a case of, we'll have some balloons, we'll have a few sausages, a little bit of music, and that was their engagement event, which I'll be honest with you, it doesn't engage me very much. But so I think it's a big problem, but I actually think it has a direct impact on the outcome of the project. So be interested to see how that pans out, John. So I'll drop you a line if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. It's just one of these, they're very positive when they speak, but then the follow-up to all of that is just so not interested, disinterest, everything else like that for it. And unfortunately, they're working with a Sage business partner who doesn't particularly help them along those lines. They're having trouble with support, etc. And they've already approached me to see as to whether there is, funny enough, another business partner that might be available to help.
I could suggest somebody.
Yeah. John, can you think of anyone? Yeah,
a really good. I'll come back to that, John. Let me think.
No, but no, it's a very strange state of affairs for a very successful company and everything. They're just dragging their heels, So yes, but I think one of the things, Alex, if you are going to actually release all the slides,
Yep.
this I think actually forms what I would class as, first off, a really good Bible to approach them with on the process that they're looking for, and then secondly, as long as I manage to keep the Paradise name in the top right hand corner, it actually doubles up as to the sort of questions that they've been asking me about as well. So thank you very much for this. It's been very interesting and useful, sir.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody else got any closing questions? Otherwise, we'll let everyone disappear for coffee and lunch. Looks like we're all good. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and thank you for your time and those questions. Cassandra will send out an email with a link to the recording and also a copy of the slides on PDF as well, so you'll be able to download those.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Brilliant.
guys.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
All the best.
Thank
Good to see you again.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.